2 days before my 7-year wedding anniversary, I received 3 unexpected gifts: a wallet, a ring, and a phone. Unfortunately, they were given to me by the medical examiner when my husband was killed in a car crash with a drunk driver. My high school psychology teacher said that the true effects of a life event could not be realized for 7 years. As I stand here today, I can tell you that 7 years does bring a perspective I was sure would never come. Meet my husband, contemporary American painter, Jeff Hettwer. He and I were high school sweethearts who met in a painting class in this very building. Jeff and I were from different crowds, but our teacher conveniently rearranged the seating chart when she noticed the spark between us. We moved to California after graduation in search of adventure and landed in the Silicon Valley during the heart of the dot-com boom. Jeff worked at a frame shop in San Jose, and I ran a gymnastics gym in Mountain View. On his first day, he framed a Nobel Prize, while I overheard whispers of the next big startup on trips to and from the water fountain. My mind was blown. These people were empowered. They weren't content doing things the way they had always been. They were writing the future, one line of code at a time. After 5 years of bonfires at the beach and trips to Lake Tahoe, we decided to move back to Minnesota. We got married at the apple orchard where we had our first date. I started a career in real estate, and Jeff got his first art studio in Northeast Minneapolis. With flexible jobs, we made time to travel, and eventually bought a small home on a lake just north of town. We spent our mornings having breakfast on the deck, and evenings watching the sunset from the lake. We were in our late 20s, and it felt like everything was pure magic. Saturday, June 14th, 2008, I woke to the sound of the doorbell. Peeling back one eyelid, I shot a dagger at the alarm clock. 7:19. I ignored the lingering chime for as long as I could until curiosity got the best of me. Goosebumps covered my bare skin the moment I lifted the covers. Hiding behind the curtain, I peeked through the blinds at the suited gentleman shifting on the front walk. Whatever you're selling, I don't want any, I thought, as I slipped back in bed and buried my face in Jeff's pillow. He had gone to a friend's house the night before for their annual all-night poker party, and the bed felt vast and foreign in his absence. Moments later, the doorbell rang again. Before 8 a.m. on a Saturday, I groaned. Grabbing the first 2 things off the top of the hamper, I dressed on my way down the hall. When I opened the door, I was startled to find that 2 sheriff's deputies had accompanied the man in the suit. "Are you Kelly Hettwer?" asked the officer standing in front of me. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "Can we come inside?" he asked. "No," I responded, thinking of the paperwork on the kitchen counter and the laundry on the ottoman. "Ma'am, I'm afraid." As he started to speak, my mind jumped to Jeff. Great, who am I going to have to bail out of jail? But as he continued, his twisted front teeth were forever burned in my mind. Accident, husband, killed. Moments later, he lifted my crumpled body from the ground and helped me inside, closing the door on the world I had known. I didn't just lose my husband that day. I lost my vision of the future. For a while, I was entirely numb. But as my senses returned, I was more aware of them than I had ever been. It's the lessons that I learned from those heightened senses that allowed me to rewrite my future. I'm hoping that you landed here in this moment because there's something you might learn from them as well. So here they are. Lesson 1. Despair smells like molded fruit baskets and rotting flowers. I quit opening the mail. I quit feeding myself. I quit taking out the garbage. Actually, I never took out the garbage. Jeff did that. Eventually, I found myself at the grocery store, crying in front of the bananas. I hate bananas, but I bought them for him. When I got to the checkout lane, my card was declined. That's when I learned that time marches on, with or without us. My first mortgage was on auto pay, but it had been months since I sent in a payment for my second mortgage. I only owed $800, but you took every penny from my accounts, I protested over the phone. Well, I guess you should have made your payments, said the unsympathetic voice on the other end. We've accelerated your mortgage, and you now owe the entire balance. You'll have to take it up with the collection agency. In the future, despair is a smell I'll extinguish long before the fruit flies arrive. Lesson 2, gratitude has a taste. Finding gratitude after loss is bitter, but it ripens if you give it time. For me, building a life again began with one central thought. I was so lucky. Never was that idea more evident than the night I wrote Jeff's memorial service card, remembering conversations he and I had. Please try not to be sad for me. I lived a dream. My love for Kelly was more than 10 lifetimes could hold. I rode around in my Jeep with the top down and the music turned up, with Jakey by my side. I had a loving family and the best of friends. I smiled, I laughed, I bluffed at cards, and I lived as an artist. How cool is that? Finding gratitude after loss is bitter, but if you can let go of it, what's left is the pure sweetness of what was. Lesson 3, the universe is speaking to you. Listen. 2 weeks before Jeff's accident, we were riding in the car when he turned to me and asked, if anything ever happened to me, who from your past would you look up? Probably Ben, I said. He laughed because Ben and I dated when we were in 8th grade. Well, we've been together since we were 17, baby. How much more of a past could I really have? A few months later, I went down to the crawl space to sort through keepsake boxes that had been pulled apart for Jeff's funeral. When I opened the lid on the very first bin, this note from Ben was on the very top. Remembering the conversation we had, I did what any girl would do. I Googled him. Turns out Ben was a fishing guide, and it had been months since I had been on the water. So I sent him a note and anxiously awaited his reply. A few weeks later, Ben took me out fishing on Lake Minnetonka. We stopped for dinner at a lakeside restaurant before the conversation got serious. Ben had been alluding to a life-changing moment for him, and he seemed to think I knew what it was. When I asked, he apologetically replied that he had been in a car accident after being at a bar with friends and had served time in jail for injuries to the woman whose car he hit. I just sat there with my mouth hanging open. My brain didn't know how to process the information I was hearing. I guess I thought that the driver in Jeff's accident was a monster who didn't care about anyone but himself. But in that moment, I opened myself to the possibility that maybe he was just a 25-year-old kid who made the worst mistake of his life, and he couldn't take it back. Knowing that the court system was outside of my control, I invited the driver to my house, where I was now living alone. I invited him to Jeff's studio to see the paintings he was working on but would never finish. And I told him about the plans we had and all the beauty that Jeff brought to the world. I told him that I was counting on him to bring a little extra beauty to the world in Jeff's absence. It turns out that the universe is speaking to us and through us every day. Lesson 4. Feel the pen solidly in your grasp. You are writing your future today. After years of trying, in the fall of '07, Jeff and I got a surprise positive pregnancy test. Our due date was June 18th, 4 days after Jeff died. For a time, I beat myself up, thinking that if I hadn't had a miscarriage, Jeff wouldn't have gone out that night. He would have been home with me, excitedly waiting for a little miracle to arrive. The what-if game is a dangerous one to play when you're looking backward. But I started to wonder what would happen if I pushed my what-ifs into the future. I got out a piece of paper and wrote down all the ways I was spending my time. Then I wrote down the first word I thought of for each item on my list. If the word was positive, I did more of it. If the word was negative, I did less. You'd be surprised at how quickly your life can change. I got myself a 3-ring binder. In it, I wrote down all of those crazy ideas that were whirling in my mind. On the cover was my vision board of everything I wanted for myself. I don't have that blue Ferrari California just yet, but I'm sure the universe is working on it. You don't have to wait until you lose everything to start rewriting a future for yourself. I pick up my lucky pen every day, and I appreciate its weight as it glides across the paper. Lesson 5. See the future. I could never have envisioned where my life would take me, but I can see the important things. When I was 16, I quit wishing for specifics and started wishing for happiness. Every penny, every birthday candle, and every shooting star were all deposits, and I was ready to cash them in. I got a patent on those cakes that people jump out of at parties. I got remarried and had my 100-year-old grandmother as my maid of honor. We bought a house in Florida and spent 12 weeks on our boat doing the Great American Loop. And 5 years ago, having no experience whatsoever, I reopened the foreclosed bakery my mom used to take me to after preschool, in the hopes that people would slow down and spend time with the people they love. I could never have envisioned what my future would hold, but I know it includes happiness. Lesson 6, trust your intuition. There's a part of you that is pure magic. It's a part we don't yet have language to describe. It's connected to everything that ever was and everything that will ever be. Just saying that gives me a shiver of knowing and belonging to something both infinitely larger and infinitely smaller than myself. It's your intuition that leads you to the chapters you never could have scripted. Like this. Meet my husband, Ben Olsen. Ben hosts a nonprofit television show on the Discovery Channel where they take U.S. military veterans out fishing and interview them from the boat. We used the note I found as our wedding invitation when we got married 7 years ago on Lake Minnetonka. In fact, a fisherman came by and took this picture of us fishing on our wedding day. Mr. Nelson was right. It does take 7 years to realize the true effects of a life event. 2 days before my 7-year wedding anniversary, I received 3 unexpected gifts. A wallet that still had our senior picture in it, a ring that I wear every day next to the one he gave me, and a phone with my last message to Jeff still visible through the cracked screen. You can never take even one moment for granted. I love you, baby. You don't have to wait until you lose everything to start rewriting your future. This could have been a sad story, but it isn't. A minute ago, someone heard this story and decided to have an amazing life. That makes this moment, this story, and Jeff's already amazing life even more wonderful than they already were. If that someone was you, I hope you go out and do something quietly wonderful or over-the-top amazing and share a little piece of your happiness with the world. Thank you.